Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pastured Pig Podcast. Today's interview, we're going to do something a little different, although I've had some people that are new to pastured pigs on before, so I wouldn't say it's terribly different. But I've got Julie Friend on the line here from Wildom Farm. She's up in the Deep Creek, Maryland area, and we've been discussing things back and forth on email and really like what she's got going on up there. Again, just very new to it, but love her attitude and love her approach, and she's got several stories she's going to share with us and some of the challenges she's faced. So, Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Troy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
All right. Well, I'm glad that you listened to the podcast. B, I'm excited that I get to talk to yet somebody else sticking their toe in the water of pastured piggery. And it sounds like so far it's been a great experience. You've enjoyed it. But let's back up here a little bit. So if you were going to tell our audience a little bit about you and a little bit about your setup, how would you explain all that?
Okay, so I am new to farming. I've only been doing this about 3 months, and I got into agriculture kind of through my own health journey. I had some pretty bad episodes of depression, and I would get sinus infections several times a year. I would have a stomach ache after I ate, things like that, things that I thought were just normal. But none of that was what sparked a change in me. It was the fact that I had gained weight. So I went on a diet for weight loss, and it was a whole foods diet where you eliminated sugar and grains and legumes and any sort of processed foods. So I did that, and honestly, within a couple days, I noticed a significant difference in my energy level, and I noticed that my mood improved, and kind of like anxiety and little things that I had went away. So that was kind of like a light bulb moment when I realized, oh my gosh, like eating whole foods.
Really is. So you're
okay.
No. So you're what you're saying. Eating your whole foods, you're able to take this moment of clarity. Say, well, I'm gaining weight, so I'm going to try this diet, and then some of the benefits that came out of that is like, wow, this is actually correcting other health issues that I've had by just simply changing my diet and eliminating some of these processed things. Is that fair to say?
Yes, exactly. I realized how much of an impact food had on my overall health, not just weight, just, my overall health, my mental health, my physical health, everything. So that was a big aha moment for me. And I started cooking more with whole foods, because if you're eating whole foods, you can't really you can't buy anything
right
at the grocery store, so you have to learn to cook from scratch. So I sort of did that, but at the time, I'll admit, I was still shopping at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize too much about agriculture. Like, I knew that factory farming was really bad, but I didn't know that if I bought something at the grocery store, like a package of grass-fed beef, that cow wasn't necessarily on pasture, that maybe it was in a feedlot being fed hay. So there were just things that I was ignorant about.
Mm-hmm.
But I was living in Chicago, and I was really fortunate to have access to a really great farmer's market. So I started, I made an intention a couple summers ago to shop exclusively at the farmer's market as much as I could. Like, I would still buy, I don't know, like salt at the grocery store, but I made an effort to buy all my meat and produce at the farmer's market. And through that, I noticed an even bigger difference in my health and the way that I felt. And so I kind of describe it like this. Like, when I switched over to a whole foods diet, it was like I eliminated all the junk. But when I started shopping at the farmer's market directly from farmers, it was like I was actually putting the nutrients back into my body and nourishing my body through these foods and, the methods that they were growing the foods. So then I started talking to farmers and just having conversations about, what their operation was like. And I would notice like different things that they had on their sign, and one of the farmers that I shopped from said regenerative agriculture. And so I was really curious about. So I started doing research on what regenerative agriculture was, and just kind of made the connection between soil health and the health of humans and the health of animals and plants and the planet. And from there, I just kind of went rabbit hole down.
It's easy to do.
Yeah.
Easy to do, isn't it?
Yes, I really did. So I'm going through this whole like, nature is everything hippy dippy phase. And meanwhile, my parents moved to a farm in Deep Creek, Maryland.
Oh, wow. So let me stop you there real quick if you don't mind. So I love this story. I love where you're going with this. So you're in Chicago. You're visiting these farmers markets. You've discovered what you've discovered about your diet and how it's affecting your health. So you're starting to ping these farmers about, hey, how do you do this, or how does this do? What does all this mean? But at the same time, your parents are moving to a farm. Is it anything related to one another, or is this just totally coincidental?
Coincidental.
Wow.
It was a farm that had been in my family, but no one was living here, and so they just decided to move here. We had always come to Deep Creek, like growing up, to go to the lake or to go skiing. So It's an area that I was very familiar with.
Yeah.
So they moved here, and it was being farmed conventional corn and soy, and of course, like I knew that was not the right path, and my mom was pretty opposed to she didn't want chemicals sprayed where she lived.
Sure.
And my dad didn't really like it either, but I think that they knew that they didn't want to have it farmed that way anymore, but they didn't know what they wanted to do alternatively. So I had heard about the Moses Conference, the Midwest Organic Conference, from a farmer at the farmer's market, and I asked my parents to come with me. And that was February 2019. So the three of us went. And after that, they decided to stop the corn and soy. They replaced those 90 acres with a perennial pasture.
Wow.
And then, yeah, which was awesome. And then it took me another full year to like muster up the courage to come here and do this. But now I'm here and we're rolling.
Yeah. Wow. That's a huge move. Okay, so and there's several moves there I want to talk about. So first of all, you all go to a conference last year and kind of really get baptized into this whole organic food movement. But to have the wherewithal to come back and take 90 acres of monocrop and decide you're going to do away with it, that's a big swing, not only in just philosophy and use of land, but even financially. Yeah, because that 90 acres, I'm sure it was producing revenue, whether it was you all putting it up or somebody else. But that's a pretty big swing there. So that's a gutsy move to make.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things that we're really fortunate is that the farm, my parents weren't reliant on the farm for income. So the 90 acres that was being farmed corn and soy, they didn't have a lot to lose by transitioning it over, where I know that could be riskier for somebody who's like completely reliant on that
Sure.
for their income. So I think that was helpful. And I think, we all just drank the Kool-Aid and really truly believe that this path is the right way, the right path in, restoring the land and what we want to do with our pasture-based livestock system.
So how did that conversation go about? Is that mom and dad calling you in Chicago and saying, hey, Julie, why don't you move to the farm? Or is that kind of reverse? Was it you saying, hey, you guys got the farm. I'm thinking about doing a total lifestyle change here. How did that come out?
I think it was a little bit of both. Like I was really curious about moving here, and it seemed like the direction that I wanted to go with my life. But I had a business in Chicago, so that made it hard for me to come back. And my parents, they're older, and they wouldn't have done this without me. Like they wouldn't have gotten livestock and turned it into like a working farm without me being here. So I think that we both brought different things to the table, and it's been so long since I've lived around them that I think we were all just excited to actually be around each other again and try to work together. And like I said, we all bring different positive attributes to the table. So we felt like we would make a really good team.
Yeah. Okay. So within the last year, it sounds like, or the last 18 months at least, you've uprooted from Chicago. You've moved to Maryland onto the farm.
3 months ago.
3 months ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went to the conference last year, and it took you a year to kind of get to this point.
It took me about a year. Yeah. And I remember like I had wrapped up my business in Chicago, and I planned on staying in Chicago for, a couple weeks to get everything together before I came here. But I had a conversation with my mom on the phone, and she was like, it takes layers like 5 months before they start laying eggs. And I was like, oh, it takes them 5 months. And I'm like, holy shit, 5 months. And I literally I got in my car the next day and drove here because I was like, we have to get things going. And it's pretty amazing how much we've accomplished in 3 months. I think because we're in the middle of like the farming season, it feels like we haven't accomplished a lot because we don't have anything to sell. But if we would have started in December and accomplished what we have by, February or March, we'd be like, oh my gosh, we're doing great. But it's harder when you're in the midst and there's all these farmers markets going on and all these things, and you don't have any products to sell yet.
Yeah, well, I got to say, I'm impressed. A dazzling Chicago urbanite moving to the farm 3 months ago, and what I know you've completed already, I'm impressed. You've hit the ground running quite well.
We really hit the ground running. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. I love it. What an incredible Green Acres story. It's like a modern version of Green Acres. Now I'm dating myself here. Well, cool. I don't want to laugh at your expense, but that is really neat. That's exciting to hear. So,
oh yeah, another funny story, and because I feel like I really have jumped in like head first, if that's the way the saying goes. But within my first 2 weeks of being on the farm, we went to visit another farm where we bought our feeder pigs, and because I wanted to like check out their operation. And they were getting ready to castrate pigs. And I said, oh, I would love to help you castrate pigs because I'm thinking I need all the experience I can get.
Right.
And then a couple days later, she texted me and said, hey, we're going to castrate on this day. Like, are you available? And I'm like, that is so nice. Like, they're right. And now, and then I realized
what a lovely neighbor to invite me over
so
for that.
Nice to include me in the castration. And then I realized after doing it, like, holy crap, I got invited because I'm just a volunteer, and with no clue of what I was getting myself into or how horrific my first real experience with a pig was like removing its manhood.
I love it. Yeah, that's definitely, trial by fire, sink or swim. There you go. And,
right.
Well, and again, I tip my hat to you to say for getting in there and doing it and not turning around and running. When you got there to see what was really going on, you stuck it out and you learned. You've experienced it, and now you have an opinion about castrating pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a qualified opinion. All right, so I have to ask because I know everyone's thinking this, and you feel free to answer this to whatever degree you want. So giving up a Chicago business and a Chicago income and moving to the farm in rural Maryland, that's a pretty big economic swing there. How's that working out for you? Do you have all farm income? Are you working something out with your folks? How does that work out?
Yeah, I'm working something out with my parents,
awesome.
Which is really great. So they have built a new house on the farm. But while they were building their house on the farm, they built a garage with an apartment above it.
Oh, yeah.
So it worked out really well because now I'm living in the garage apartment and
Sweet.
working full time on the farm. And so it's kind of like I'm getting the apartment and plus some pay.
Yeah, that's excellent. 20 years ago when I bought my property, that's what my wife and I did. We built an apartment in anticipation of building the main house, and I'd love to go back about 18 years ago when we were getting ready to spend the money on building the house and punch that guy right in the nose and say, no, stay in the apartment for the rest of your life. You will save so much money.
Oh, yeah.
Well, cool.
I know.
Did I lose you?
Oh, no, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. Wow, I'm sorry. It went very dead there for a second. Okay, cool. So, so let's talk a little bit about the farm. And I know eventually, for those listening, we are going to talk about pigs, I promise. But this just fascinates me. So you moved to the farm. You're kind of hitting the ground running. And obviously, it sounds like you got egg layers in. So what was the start? What did you say? Okay, here, Mom and Dad. Here's the things we definitely got to get started with this year.
Well, in a lot of ways, I feel like we started backwards because we have the 90 acres of pasture, but we didn't start with any like ruminant animals. So, but I think we started with things that we felt like were easy. So we got the layers, we got meat chickens, we got turkeys, and we got the pigs. So we got 2 Kune pigs, and then we have 10 pigs that are a mix of large black, old spot, and Tamworth.
Okay.
And then we have a market garden, but it's kind of takes the back end to the livestock. So it's a work in progress.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about your choice of pigs or how you found them. So first of all, why the 2 different groups, and how did that come about, and what's your plan with that this year?
So the 10 pigs that are the mix of old spot and large black and Tamworth, we can just refer to them as the 10 pigs for the remainder of the conversation. That's just easiest. That's what we refer them as. Okay. So that's the farm I got them from, where I castrated the pigs. And the farmers who own that farm and run it are friends of ours, and they've been doing pigs on pasture for decades. So I knew that that's where I wanted to get the pigs from, just because I felt like they had really good genetics for raising them on pasture. I felt really confident about that.
Excellent.
And then doing more research, I got really intrigued by Kunis because I, heard about them being good grazers and just having like a slightly different type of meat or type of pork. So I was really curious to try them. So we got the 2 feeder Kunis, and we actually got those ones first, and we just fell in love with them.
Yeah.
They are luckily for them and for us, they're both girls. So we're actually going to breed them. We're not going to eat them. So that worked out. But we named them. We really just, they're so cute. We're like big softies when it comes to them.
Right.
But so, and then so I think we'll breed them for sure. I'm not sure if we'll just sell all the piglets. I'm not sure that we can raise them for meat just because of the way that they are.
Right.
So, but the other pigs are great, and I think we're going to keep 2 or 3 of them as well to breed in the spring. So.
Okay, so you've got the 10 that we've talked about, and you've got the 2 that are becoming more mascots on the farm.
They are mascots. Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Right. So the 10 sounds like you've got a mixture of barrows and some gilts that sound good, and I love the fact that you had the resource of having your friends who had the experience with pasture raising pigs. That helps so much. You're so far ahead of the game finding reliable stock to bring in and raise. So it sounds like you can always go back to them for additional genetics, for help, for any of that insight that you may need.
Yeah, exactly. It's been so great having them as kind of like mentors and being able to reach out to them. And the pigs, you can tell that they do have very good genetics. Like they do really, really well on pasture. We got a crazy cold spell in May, and they were fine. Like they didn't. The cold, they were fine in the cold. They're okay in the heat. They're mostly in the woods, so they're shaded, but they seem to be doing really well on pasture, and they're really friendly, but they're also hardy. So I'm really happy with them. Yeah. I think we got really lucky with our first batch of pigs.
Right. Very good. So how are you right now? How are you managing them on pasture right now? Do you have electric system in place? Are you using netting? How are you moving them around?
Yeah, I'm using the pig net. And the reason that I went with that as opposed to like uh strands is because we do not have any perimeter fencing,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a major concern for with my dad, with having, pigs on the loose. So after just asking a couple different farmers and getting feedback, I felt like the pig net was more secure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
fair. Mm-hmm.
but it's a real pain in the woods.
It is. It is. And that's the unfortunate side with the branches and the uneven ground and those type of things. It does make it a challenge to go through the woods with the netting.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the one thing that's challenging. And, I might switch over now that they're older, but I'm not sure about that. And then with the coonies, they roam. They just roam. They don't have fencing.
So these are really two dogs. They're not pigs at this point, right?
Yeah. Well, where we're located though, and this is another part of my strategic planning for keeping them, is that we have so much tourism where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And our plan is to we're in the process of creating a couple campsites for camping, and then we're going to build tiny homes on the property as well. So, and just as far as doing farm tours and having people on the farm, I think it's good to have the coonies who are so friendly, and just for people to be able to interact with an animal that they wouldn't normally get to interact with.
Exactly. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Nope. I think that's a great idea. Yep. Especially in that Deep Creek area. I've been there multiple times. That is definitely a draw. So you could make that farm a destination location where people could come and experience, be on vacation, but still experience some farm life. That's
right.
Great idea. That's good value add. We've talked to several people on the podcast that have done just that same element, value add the production by having some agritourism element tied into it. Well, you had mentioned you'd mentioned the challenge of the poultry netting, or the pig netting. I'm still in chicken mode here. In the woods. So in your 3 months of being on the farm, what other challenges have you run into when it comes to pigs that maybe you're experiencing right now, or maybe you foresee in the future?
The biggest challenge right now is just the fact that we haven't developed a water system yet. So it's a lot of carrying 5-gallon buckets of water.
Yeah, that gets old quick.
And that gets old. Yes, and it's really time consuming. So we actually did just buy some of the IBC totes. And we're working toward that. We have water on the property. We have a spring and we have a creek. So we have the ability to get water. It's just that we haven't actually developed a water system yet. So I would say that that's been the biggest challenge so far. Is the water. And then, we talked a little bit about the feed sourcing. Mm-hmm. I want to feed organic. That was one of the things that, as a consumer, I struggled to find a producer who was doing pigs on pasture and doing organic feed. And now I understand why, because it's really hard to find and it's really expensive.
Yeah.
But it's something that it's not really negotiable with me. I would sooner not raise pigs than forego the organic feed, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's been challenging, because right now we're sourcing feed and it's 3.5 hours away, or it's $150 to ship a pallet. So yeah, so it's a day trip to go pick up feed, and me being new and not really having, not really knowing, okay, we're going to go through this amount of feed over these 3 months, so this is the amount I need to order. So it's making more trips because because I run out of things. Yep. Or I'm about to run out.
Oh, yeah. I know what that's like. That's why, you really are in in such a learning environment right now that I'm sure you're documenting this as much as possible, but just figuring out just the life cycle on that farm. And that's what fascinates me with talking to so many different people. There's so much uniqueness to individual setups that you can't just go over to XYZ farm and say, okay, this is what you do. I'm going to just duplicate that exactly, because each farm situation is unique. But okay, so yeah, sorry about that disconnection there. But so as we were talking about, just kind of learning as you go along, it's helping you figure out. It's a new ground you're plowing, pardon the pun, where you're trying to figure out exactly what type of feed consumption you have, where to source that best. What about storage? How are you storing your feed right now? Do you have infrastructure like barns and those things that you can store that in?
Yeah, we do. Some buildings are there's a barn. The barn.
Julie, I'm losing you again.
Oh,
Yeah, you just.
can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yeah, you're coming back.
Okay. Weird.
Oh, now you're.
Barney.
Yeah, you're going again.
Let me see. Maybe. Okay.
You're coming and going. Still can't hear you. I can see we're still connected, but I can't hear you at all. Get a question about infrastructure. So you started to tell me about your barn, if you'd pick up right there.
Yeah. Now?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so whenever you're ready.
Oh, we have some infrastructure that was existing on the farm. We have a barn that is just in okay condition, and an old grain storage building that we actually turned into our brooder. And then we have a machine shed and another building that we call the shop.
Okay.
So we have different buildings, and then all of the infrastructure that we've sort of built for our animals, because everything's on pasture and everything's being farm. So everything that we've built is mobile. So we built like an egg mobile for our layers that we move every day. And the pig huts, we built these little like A-frame huts that are on skids so we can pull them with the gator.
Yeah, good deal.
Yeah.
So in your 3 months of raising pigs, what surprised you about pigs? What is something that you've learned, or maybe multiple things you've learned about pigs that maybe you weren't aware of?
Well, when I told you that I castrated the pigs, and they were squealing and screaming, And my heart was like racing because it sounded like, I was killing them. But after actually having pigs, I realized that that is just how noisy they are.
Yeah.
Like, if you bring food, they scream bloody murder. Like, that's just the noise that they make. It doesn't mean that they're actually like dying or hurt or anything like that.
Right.
So yeah. So that's one thing that I learned. And, I also learned that planning is really hard. I mean, as much as I've read and listened to podcasts, um, doing is completely different from reading.
Yeah.
So even in terms of just figuring out like when the right time is to move their paddock, and just kind of, you have to have that intuition where you watch your animals and you kind of notice their behavior and characteristics, and know when they need something, or when something's right, or when something's wrong. So I think just taking a chill pill on the whole like reading and planning, and just using my intuition to take care of the animals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just how little I know. I remember when I was driving here, I listened to your podcast and you talked about boar taint, and I had never even heard of boar taint. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a farmer and I've never even heard of boar taint. Like, what other things do I just have no idea about?
Yeah, yeah. It is amazing. And again, I think the minute we stop learning, we start dying. But
right.
But it's. I mean, it's not going to stop. You're going to learn something new every single time, and that's the beauty of it, and that's the challenge. I mean, that's the love-hate with farming. And I think of right now, you're not that far away from me. I'm thinking, okay, in Maryland, you guys have probably had a wet spring like we've had, so you're going to have a certain assessment this first year of how the pasture is healed and how the chickens have done well here and how you've been able to have water in the creek in this spot. But maybe next year we have a dry spring. So those are just things that you're going to have to prepare for and
right.
make notes. And that's where it's really nice to have. I mean, now you know why there was a farmer's almanac. Now you know why these guys would keep these journals, because that's how they could keep track of all this stuff. I've written more down farming than I did when I was in college. So it seems like well,
right.
Well, I want to transition, if we could, to something that you shared with me in email. Something I thought was really neat. So you use the hashtag Save the Pork. So
yes.
So unpack that for me. Explain to our listeners what that is.
Yeah. Okay. So hashtag Save the Pork. Okay, so I moved here in the midst of COVID, and shortly after I got to the farm, it was all over the news about processing plant closures and pigs being euthanized in, very large numbers. And I'd kind of done some like things on social media where I reposted it, and I kind of had, this like, I told you so attitude where I'm like, we need a decentralized food system.
Right.
But all that, and I felt like in the long-term goal to combat our centralized food system, I am doing something by producing local meat for the community. But in the short term, it felt like there wasn't much that I could do to like mitigate this situation. Until my friend reached out to me, my farmer friend, and he said that he heard of a factory in Ohio that was set to euthanize a few thousand pigs, and they were asking that people come buy them at an extreme price cut. So he sent me that text at like 10 o'clock, and I was getting in bed, and I must have thought about it the whole night. And then I texted my parents at 5 a.m. and said, we need to talk. And they definitely thought that I was going to tell them like I was moving back to Chicago. But but I was like, no, I've been tossing and turning all night because there's these pigs that are getting euthanized, and we have an opportunity to do something, but it was hard for me to figure out exactly how that fit into our pasture-based, organic fed system.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
But I ultimately realized that I care about animal welfare and human health, and food waste is a big component to that. So I didn't want to see these animals' deaths go in vain. So we kind of, the three of us, just called other farmers that we knew, talked to a lawyer to make sure like we were legally doing everything correctly. We had advice from the extension office and figured out like how we could actually get the pigs, bring them back here and process them on our farm and then donate the meat. And the amount of people who wanted to participate in it was just like overwhelming. And the families who took home the meat actually participating in the processing of the meat. So they were here for like the slaughter and the processing of the meat that they took home. And I just thought that was incredible, because how cool is it that, maybe for the first time ever, they were that connected to their food. And for me too, like I had never, I mean, I've, killed bugs, but I've never witnessed, like a beating heart stop like that. So it was quite the experience, both positive and then just the experience of actually going to the factory farm and picking up the pigs and seeing the conditions and just seeing, things that I had only read about or seen in photos, and actually seeing in person the way that the pigs were being raised and the confinement that they were kept in was, I mean, just like heart shattering. Mm-hmm. And when I brought them back to the farm, they were only at the farm for 2 days before we slaughtered them, but you could just, I mean, it was their first time on grass, but you could tell that they just, like they had been stripped of a lot of their instinctive behaviors.
Right.
And that, it was really sad. And it made me really, really grateful for what I'm doing with raising the pigs on pasture. But, yeah, it was really sad that that's the way that we're producing a majority of the meat.
Yeah.
But ultimately, yeah, go ahead.
Wow. It was almost a Wendell moment there, it sounds like, for you, that you've really experienced the life and death cycle of farm life. But then to do what you all did, I think it's just fantastic to take something that's going to be euthanized, and I agree with you 100% that our broken food system needs to address the centralized issues, the centralized processing, but even more is the amount of waste. It's like 40% of all of our food that we raise is wasted. And
right.
The fact that you're bringing this in, you're processing, and the wisdom that you have to realize, I don't want to incorporate these pigs into my operation, because that's not what we're about. But the fact that you did, take the risk to get them, bring them in, the expense associated with that, and process them and give that food away to people. And you're exactly right. I'm sure there's so many people that have learned so much and have been so disconnected from their food that when they came to be involved in that, when they open that pack of pork chops or open that sausage on breakfast morning, they're going to realize that, wow, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of effort that goes into making this pack of sausage. It's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely one of my goals with the farm, is to get people more connected to their food, to help people, to engage with people and help them to understand, where food comes from and how it's raised and how that impacts the health of everything. But yeah, for me, I definitely experienced the circle of life in that moment with the pigs. And when we brought them home, I was I was really shook up and I was really upset. And then when we actually harvested them and the people took the meat home, I realized that it's more about the suffering that got me than it was about the actual death. Right? I think that this is just part of the process, and everything dies to, it becomes energy for something else, right? Like those pigs' deaths are now sustaining other people's lives.
Right.
And that's really the point of everything. But if we can do that in a way that benefits the animals and benefits the planet, then I think we're in a good place.
Yeah. Well said. No, I think that's great, and tying in the educational element to your farm. So whether as you go along and learn, then you're obviously sharing that experience with others and giving people that really have no desire to learn how to farm, making sure they fully understand or at least better understand the process of where their food comes from and the difference of a piece of sausage, let's say, produced on your farm versus something they get at a local drive-through. So I think that's really critical for all of us. We're all ambassadors of change when it comes to the slow food movement and organic processes and things that we have to be good representatives for as many people as possible.
Right. And from what I through that experience and through the farm and just posting on social media and the amount of feedback that I've gotten from people, it's really apparent that people want to learn, and they want, like, just like me, like how I said, I didn't know that a package of grass-fed beef didn't mean that that animal was on pasture. You don't know what you don't know. And the only way that people are going to learn is through education. So it's just putting that information out there. And I think people are really receptive and wanting to learn about their food and learn about agriculture.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's as people start to have the curtain pulled back, then it creates more questions. It creates more curiosity for them to fully understand, and they appreciate it more. I can think of years, decades of my life where I took a boneless chicken breast for granted because that's what everybody had, and only until I raised my own chickens and processed them myself and processed multiple hundred on the farm by hand, do I appreciate, if I see one of my boys leave some chicken left on their plate, it's like, you're not throwing that in the garbage can. Something's going to happen to that. Either you're going to eat it or it's going to be used somewhere else. So,
right. And it's so true, right? It's the disconnect that is leading us down these paths of, purchasing from factory farms and wasting food. And if we could just reconnect to our food, then maybe we would be more conscious about the way that we're consuming.
Yes, I agree. Well, Julie, obviously I could spend another hour just talking about this and the philosophy behind why we do what we do, but I won't keep you that long. But one thing I'd like to ask you that I ask everyone as we wrap up our conversation is, in your experience so far of raising pastured pigs, what do you find to be the most beneficial or your favorite aspect of seeing those pigs out on pasture?
Well, I would say the first time that I moved the pigs from one paddock to the next paddock, and I kind of I didn't know how long to keep them on a paddock. I just figured I would know when I saw. And I did notice, I noticed that they got a little bit bored. They kind of had a been there, done that attitude and laid around a lot more. So I thought, okay, it's time to move them. And when I moved them to the new paddock, they wiggled and danced and ran and rolled on their backs all over the place. And it was just I could see how stimulated they were by this new space and how much they liked using their, and how intelligent they are, how much they like using their brains. They like seeing new things and being able to root up new things. And so that was really cool. And that, I think, is my favorite part of from an animal welfare and just characteristics of pigs perspective. But I do have one more too. And this is more so about ecology. When we had them, when we first got them, we had them in the barn with outdoor access to a decent sized outdoor paddock. And I thought, because we needed to keep them in the barn because they were little, so I wanted to close them up at night because of predators. Mm-hmm. And I thought that they'd be in there for a couple weeks and that would be fine until we put them in the woods. And by day 3, they had completely rooted up just everything. And then it was raining, and so it was completely mud, and I was just oh my gosh, what are these destructive little things? And I'm thinking, I get on my dad if he leaves tire tracks with the tractor, and these pigs that I brought in just destroyed this. And so then we put them out in the woods, and I didn't really think much of it. And then all of a sudden, I just noticed it was just a pasture. Like, I had walked by it every single day when I went past the barn or to the barn, and I never really took the time to look until one day it was like up to my calves, different grasses and different plants. And that was only like 3 weeks later. And so what they had done was not actually destructive. They had like stimulated all this growth and probably rooted up different seeds, um and it was really cool. I mean, that's kind of, what we're trying to do is incorporate domestic species into our system to enhance the ecosystem, and that's exactly what they did.
Oh yeah, it is incredible. I've seen areas of our woodlot pastures where we're doing silvopasture, where the seed bank has been stirred up, and I'm seeing varieties come back in greater densities in some areas. In some areas, it's something else, and it is fantastic. And it is amazing to how you can fold them into the ecology, as you said, and just see what they can do to positively influence. And obviously, there's things that we can neglect where it'll negatively influence, and that's that balance that we have to strike. But it is
right, and that has nothing to do with the pigs and everything to do with human mismanagement.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
So yeah, they're really, really amazing. I really enjoy them.
Wonderful. Well, Julie, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and especially it takes some courage for somebody to come on the podcast who's new, because I'm sure you may be a little apprehensive about some people that are listening that are very versed in pastured piggery, and you're just starting out. But I appreciate your insight, and I think if I could say you're one of them that gets it. You understand already what's required and what's needed, and there's still going to have some hurdles you're going to experience. There's all kinds of things. If I talk to you 6 months from now, I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of more insight that you've run into. But I'm really excited with where you are, and again, your willingness to come on and talk with me about it.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you had me.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, if you'd mentioned Facebook, so is there any social media or any online presence where people can find out more about Wildom Farm?
Yeah, on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, it's Wildom, WILDOM Farm.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, I pray that you have a good rest of the week, and then to enjoy your time out in the pasture.
You too, Troy. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast, or to submit topics, or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.